Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Let's law better. Together we explore topics of interest to legal operations. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. And don't forget to have a blast. Shaking up the legal world takes a lot of elbow grease. So let's make sure we've got each other's backs along the way. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Today is the episode where we feature the authors of this book. We have many contributors. You might have heard. We wrote this book. It's an exciting project. We have almost 50 contributors. They're amazing leaders in future of law that live all over the world and practice law and contribute and do some exciting stuff. So I am making an effort to bring them to you, to have a conversation and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So without further ado, Maryam, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. I am super excited to have this conversation. For those folks who have not met you, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Olga. Hi, everyone. My name is Maryam Salehijam. I'm based in sunny San Diego, and currently I'm a relationship manager at Axiom Law, the world's largest alternative legal service provider.
I love it. And before you decided to do that, and before you decided to contribute to this amazing book, it's more like a treatise, it's pretty thick, it's full of great insight. What have you done before?
So I went to law school when I was 17. I've always had a passion for the law. And I went to law school in Europe where becoming a legal academic is a thing. So I ended up getting an LLM in international law and then a PhD in international business law. And during my PhD, I started to become really passionate about this idea of creating happy lawyers, efficient lawyers, effective lawyers, and just making sure there's more happiness within the legal industry. And so when I finished my PhD in international business law, I pivoted to legal technology, where I had a lot of learnings that got to learn about exciting legal tech that's out there that's transforming the way we practice law. But along the way, I found myself in this space called alternative legal service providers, or ALSPs for short, where I'm seeing their transformative power and how much they can enable this efficiency and happiness with what they do. And I've also seen how they play well within this space where we're trying to bring tech. And so I wrote my book chapter on ALSPs and legal technology and how they're great partners.
We will definitely talk about ALSPs. I definitely want to explore this and define it and really make sure that folks understand our future of law ecosystem is full of stakeholders and contributors, and ALSPs are very important ones. Anyone who's been in house, you probably encountered them in the wild and found them very helpful. So we definitely do a deep dive on that. But before we do that, Maryam, I want to talk a little bit about this concept of getting your legal degree in Europe, then going for PhD, then going to the United States. And ultimately, I guess I'll ask you this question. You probably considered practicing, and you probably considered geography. So help me understand, one, how you chose your geography, and two, how you chose to practice or not.
So geography, it's a bit of a matter of the heart. So during my PhD program, I did 2 research stays in America, where I met my husband, who's American, and I decided, since I'm Canadian, the US seems like a better option for us than Europe. And so upon moving to the United States, I started networking with lawyers that were practicing here and asking them what their lives are like and what they like, what they don't like. And what I started to see was this alarming trend of very much burned out lawyers, unhappy lawyers, lawyers suffering from, stress, anxiety, depression. And I thought, ooh, that does not make me want to practice law. That makes me want to help these lawyers out and find an effective way of making their lives a little bit better, which made my transition really easy because I knew what my mission is within the United States and the legal industry here.
I love it. Every good story has a boy in it. That's a good story.
Yeah.
And help me understand, have you ever thought about, oh, would it be nice to give folks legal advice? And I know you sort of saw lawyers and many of them burn out and may or may not be extraordinarily happily practicing law. Is there a point in your life where you're thinking, oh, I wish I was actually giving people legal advice?
I do. I do think that it is always in the back of my mind, but where I see myself in terms of the practice of law is more so on the dispute resolution side of the house. So helping resolve disputes more of as that mediator. Because again, there's a side where you're practicing law and implementing it and trying to get kind of your side to win. But then there's that side that tries to get everyone to win, which is where negotiation, dispute resolution comes into play. And that's where I believe, my most authentic self, because the real version of me likes to make sure we find the best solution versus the only solution that helps one party.
Oh, I love that real version of you. It's so cool. Let's talk about ALSPs because that's a term that is used a lot. I'm sure folks have heard this term. ALSPs is also maybe a term that maybe not fully understood. So let's sort of start with the definition and go from there. Let's define it, give some examples, and kind of maybe why you're excited to work with them.
I'm going to first define ALSP in its actual definition, alternative legal service provider, and then start to give you all of the things that are creating confusion for people who are not super familiar with the space. Much like the terminology legal tech, ALSP encompasses a wide range of companies and services. So sometimes somebody might say ALSP, and what they're meaning is offshoring to a company in India or the Philippines. Sometimes they say ALSP and they manage service providers like United Lex, where they have teams that are pre-built and the teams can carry out a wide range of legal functions from e-discovery to contract review. Or they can refer to companies like Axiom, where we have what we call a full range of services. So we can do secondments, right? For overflow support, for gap fill, for mat leave. We can provide ad hoc counsel, right? Just like a law firm, we're doing law firm work. We're bringing the lawyers, they're charging by the hour, but they're not at all on a certain like permanent billing system. Or we can do a managed project, right? And so I think when you're thinking about ALSPs, as a first step, ask yourself, what am I looking for and which ALSP should I be speaking with? Because when you don't have a clear understanding of the space, you might not be talking to certain ALSPs you should be speaking to, but only talking to the ones that actually can't help you. And that's why you're thinking ALSPs are not the solution to my problem. And it's just simply because you haven't spoken to the right ones.
So sounds like there is variety of ALSPs in the wild. And if you were to categorize into kind of bigger buckets to help folks to, as you said, identify their needs and ask the right questions, what are the top 3, 5 buckets that you can think of the top of your head?
I think the first bucket is more so low cost staffing, less experienced lawyers, right? So these are folks that are perfect for more entry level tasks that you're trying to get off your plate. The second category is managed service providers. So you have big projects, you have a big litigation, you have a big migration of contracts. So you need a managed service provider. And then the third category, I would say that's the category I would pay the most attention to, is the category where they have the experienced lawyers, they have the quality of lawyers, and they can do both that support of your legal team, kind of augmented teams, or they can do law firm work for you. And that law firm work portion is the portion where I think some people are not aware that ALSPs can actually replace your law firms for a wide range of tasks. And that creates efficiency of optimization and cost savings. And so that's the category that I'm the most passionate about because I see law firm rates going up, which is pushing in-house teams to consider changing the way they do things. And I think right now it's a scramble to find the perfect solution, and there is no perfect solution. It's a comprehensive solution, and ALSPs is one piece of the puzzle.
So the cost pressures of in-house, well known and documented all over LinkedIn. And sometimes they're sold through things like ALSPs, and sometimes they're sold through things like legal tech solutions. Do you see an overlap between legal tech solution and LSP? How do they sort of coexist, overlap in the wild? And I guess maybe because I know you've done some things in legal tech, and transitioned more on the ALSP side. How do you, as a professional, sort of think about that?
I would say ALSPs and legal tech should be best friends. And I'll tell you why. Whenever I've gone to legal tech demos or I've talked to legal tech founders, they're trying to solve the same problem as ALSPs, which is giving the legal teams more time back so they can focus on the business essential tasks and not doing things that are just, they shouldn't be on their plate. But where I wanted to transition out of legal tech is the reason that every time we were talking about implementing, the lawyers were saying, "Oh, I can't actually invest the time to learn this tool and use this tool because I'm too busy." And so I was sitting there going, "Well, how can I help these people be less busy so they can learn to use the tool so the tool can make them more effective, right?" So it's this vicious cycle. And that's why I think ALSPs could be best friends of legal tech, because we can come in, we can take over the work that's keeping these lawyers really busy for a certain amount of time. The lawyers can learn to use the tools and really optimize themselves. And then the ALSP can roll back off or stay on maybe on a reduced number of hours. But you really cannot talk about AI and legal technology to an in-house legal team that's already burning out, that's already overburdened, because you're coming in and saying, I know you don't have time, but now I'm asking you to learn something and use something that's going to take more of your time. And that's where I like this concept of change management, right? You have to have a strategy around change management before you implement anything. Otherwise, your implementation will fail. And we see legal tech implementation failing at really high rates. And I think it's because we don't look at the current burden and how to lift it before tech can be implemented.
So let's pursue this conversation about being BFF of legal tech and ALSPs. How should this partnership, I suppose, let's call this not friendship, let's call it partnership. It's a more precise word. How should partnership between the two evolve, and at what point from the perspective of in-house leaders or legal operations leader should they sort of create the circle of friendship, bring everyone together, make sure that everyone can play together in the sandbox, and create bigger, better things together that actually work and are not lost in the implementation?
So let me clarify to make sure I understand. You're asking like when is the right time to do that from a legal ops leader perspective?
How's the timing and the structure?
Good.
How do you create this friendship so it results in appropriate roles and outcomes that is a satisfying experience for everyone involved?
I would say the when is yesterday. So, as a legal ops leader, you should know what ALSPs can provide to you and the legal team that you are managing, right? So, some ALSPs will actually have legal operations professionals on their bench who have deep experience implementing legal tech. So, sometimes I'm talking to clients and they're like, we're thinking about 5 e billing solutions. We've never implemented e billing before. And my answer is always, oh, you should talk to one of our legal ops leaders at Axiom on our bench, because they can just help you throughout this whole thing. And once the project is over, they can roll off. So it's not permanent headcount. And that's the perfect solution, right? So that's one area where you should be talking to us already, because people have the experience you're seeking. Instead of you having to go talk to everyone, you can just talk to one person. The second stage is more that strategic question of like when, how, why. And that, again, is based on your legal team. You have to truly understand your legal team, how it functions, how it operates, what's its pain points, what it's on its wish list. And then from there, have an honest conversation with all of your outside partners. So the more honest a client can be with me, the better I can serve them. So where I see kind of this disconnect is they're told something by the legal tech providers, like, oh, this is super easy to implement. And so they don't set a budget for the implementation, for the change management, for that process. And so the implementation, again, ends up failing because they weren't properly scoping out the project to begin with. So I think if you want to be really effective as a legal ops leader, you should be talking to the ALSPs that are not showing strong alliance to a single technology provider or kind of being just eyes on one company, because they can be the most honest with you about the various processes for each technology and the downfall of some of them, right? Where do things break? We know where they break. Let us tell you, and let us tell you in an unbiased way so that you're going into this technology implementation, this AI implementation with your eyes wide open so you can be successful. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure, which is what we want to avoid.
So it sounds like you do recommend the kind of more arm length relationship between the technology provider and ALSP, so that the ALSP can give sort of the best advice. Am I taking the
Exactly.
right
Yeah,
Okay, good.
that's
Okay.
exactly what I'm saying. Because if they're too close, right, then they might not be as honest about what's the best technology for you, right? If I have alliances with a specific company and there are better options out there, I can't be super honest and say, actually, for your use case, I recommend this other solution based on what I've heard, things we've seen, and here's like 5 legal ops leaders on our bench that can tell you the same thing, because it kind of interferes, right, with the independence, right? I kind of think about it like financial audit, right? You need independent auditors. So you kind of need independent ALSPs so they can be honest with you about what technology works, what doesn't, and what implementation is really like for most of them.
That's very interesting. And I think that concept of independence and arm length relationship is very familiar to lawyers, yes, in-house lawyers as well. I've definitely seen the in-house lawyers quiz both sides on the relationship, whether they have sort of kickbacks, whether they have close partnerships, how well they work together in the past, all kinds of things. And it sounds like you encourage a couple of things. One is arm length relationship, and two, due diligence of experiences and independent judgment, so that ALSP could be an effective and trustful advisor to the in-house leaders.
Exactly. And I think that should be the goal for all legal ops leaders and in-house legal leaders as well, GCs, DGCs. You need to find the ALSPs that can be your trusted partner. So you shouldn't only be going to ALSPs when you have a need, right? You should be going to them when you're already thinking about something and have them advise you on what they've seen work, what they've seen failed. And the best thing about ALSPs, and this is what I tell my clients, we're going to give you really good advice and really good insights without the big consultancy price tag, right? Some people are going to the big four and paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to be told something I can tell them in a 5-minute conversation, right? And I think that's where there's the true value of ALSPs, their true reach, their true knowledge base, right? It's one thing to go to them for talent, but it's another thing to go to them for knowledge.
Let's talk about change management. That is not a small topic. You mentioned it a couple of times. Change management is something that everyone agrees needs to be happening when you implement, when you have changes in your organization. It is also agreed that it is an art and a science, and can be done very well. I know from your perspective, you have seen quite a few things. Some of them are done well, and some of them could be done better. What are the sort of top best practices, 1, 2, or 3 practices that a team that is considering to implement a solution, change how they approach outside counsel, whatever the change may be? What is the best change management tactics in-house leader, whether it's a lawyer or operations professional, should consider before making big changes?
My advice is always think big, start small, right? I have GCs that are like, we want to implement generative AI. And I'm like, okay, let's calm down. Like, do you have an intake form? Simple things, right? Do you have contract managers, right? So it's like, think big. It's good to have a big picture, but start small, right? Find solutions that are easy to implement, that are proven to work, and implement those first. Build trust within the team that when you bring change, that change is proven to work. It's going to help them, it's going to make them happier, it's going to make them more effective. When we think big and implement big changes, that's when you see things fail, people are unhappy because there's no proven methodology right now around generative AI implementation. Everyone's just figuring it out. So don't feel this fear of missing out that you too have to have this big thing when you haven't even done the small things. And what I see a lot of times is most legal teams don't even have the basic operational functions optimized, right? So start there. Really look at when your legal team is brought in to help the business. Why is it brought in? What kind of lawyers are doing the work? How much time are they spending on the work? What is the work they're enjoying? What is the work they're not enjoying? And from there, start trimming, right? Kind of like creating a beautiful garden. You can have this idea of having all these trees with fruits, but unless you have really good soil, the tree isn't going to grow or fruit, right? So start at the basics, start at the bottom. And again, if you don't have a legal ops leader that has experience doing these things, go to the ALSPs, find the right type of legal ops leaders to come in temporarily and help you create a vision, create a plan, and then slowly start that implementation. And the other thing I would say here is, in my experience, one of the biggest reasons people are running to legal technology or AI is cost. They want to reduce reliance on law firms. And I'm here to say that's one of the ways of reducing cost at law firms. Think about all the other ways you can reduce law firm spend. And then think about what's the easiest thing for your team to implement and start there before jumping ahead into things that you might not have the capacity of doing.
I love the message of think big, act small, prove, build on top of the wins, bring people on board, go forward, and kind of instill the confidence both in your competence and ability to execute to get stuff done. That is definitely the most effective way. It should resonate with most in-house leaders because in the end of the day, technology or not, that is how we get stuff done. I want to talk a little bit more on implementation because implementation is sort of a specific challenge. Implementing a CLM or ELM or a billing solution or a matter management or whatever you are implementing, an M&A solution if you are focused on that, or IP solution. There are quite a lot of those options as well, and especially if you're an IP-driven organization, it's going to be very important. All of that are massive projects. They need to be project managed. They need to sort of create excitement and the plan and the vision and hold each other's hands and cross the bridge of digital transformation. It's a process that takes a long time. What is the role that ALSP can do in that very complex, often long-term process to ease the pain, to really help to get from point A to point B, and to make sure that success is reached on a sort of predictable timeline?
Yeah, I think the biggest role again comes down to existing experience and knowledge, right? Within legal ops, and this is kind of accepted, is that we don't have kind of a playbook that everybody agrees on, right? That's why we go to Clock. That's why we go to legal ops events. That's why we write books like this, because we're trying to tell other people, hey, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. We're trying to knowledge share, right? And because we currently have this absence of an ultimate truth, right, written somewhere, we need to rely on existing knowledge. And knowledge oftentimes comes from firsthand experience, right? So if you don't have firsthand experience implementing multiple e-billing solutions, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so when you go to the ALSPs, you can say, hey, I'm thinking about these 3 e-billing solutions. Who do you have that has experience with at least 2? Or if you don't have someone that has experience with at least 2, give me 3 people that each know these 3 systems, and I want to put them in a room and talk to them, right? And I want to get their best sense of what to do here. And then from there, select the best person to help me do this implementation, right? That's how you can almost guarantee a successful implementation, because you're getting the best person to guide you through a path you have never walked. And this analogy maybe will make sense for some people. When I go to a foreign country and I want to walk around foreign streets or a forest, right? I went to the Amazon jungle. I need a guide that can tell me, don't touch that, touch this, look over here, jump here, right? Sit down, eat this. And it made my experience so much less scary and less dangerous than if I just walked into the Amazon forest on my own. Now, legal technology is not the Amazon forest. It's less dangerous than that. But if you decide to do something and it doesn't go well, it only makes you look bad. And my goal is to make sure you look good. So Always talk to the ALSPs before you spend the money on buying the technology or start implementing, so they can kind of help guide you to make sure you're successful at what you're doing.
Yeah. Amazon Jungle, you will need a guide for sure.
The LM implementation, I would say you need a guide too. So
Yeah, that place is full of predators, and you don't want to be a prey. You definitely, if you learn one thing in life, never put yourself in the position of being a prey. For sure. You mentioned Gen AI a few times, and the fact that it is a shiny object. I tend to think of Gen AI as technology as opposed to a solution. In the
mm,
same way, I think about electricity, internet, all of that stuff. It's sort of a backhand. You, if it works well, you shouldn't be able to see it or touch it. If it doesn't work well, then you're gonna learn all the glorious details of how and why it doesn't work and hallucinates and does all these other things. And then, of course, as someone who operated a legal tech company, I've had many conversations where people will come to me and say, I want some, I call it, I want some problem. I want some AI. And it's this, I want some conversation is very interesting because, you sort of say, well, tell me more. What problem are you solving? How are you thinking about solution? And they just want some. They just want some AI in their life because all of the complex feelings they have around, fear of missing out and being on a cutting edge and their ability to talk to their boards and CEO about, oh my God, we have some AI in our lives, or at some point, it was NFTs and blockchain. At some point, it was electricity, I'm sure. When you have this conversation that really moves people away from technology to solutions, because solutions don't have to be technological, they could be, and they could be a combination of technology and all kinds of other stuff. What is your best tip to go from this, I want some technology, to, hey, you really need to start thinking about problems you have and solutions and prioritizing and taking the lower hanging fruit and being intentional about it. Other than the Amazon jungle, what else can we have to move away from technology
yeah,
to solutions?
I love that you said it's like electricity, right? It's a piece of technology. It's not necessarily the solution, right? I would say unknowingly ask the question, why? Right? I want technology. Why? Why? Because the company is telling me we should use more technology. Why is the company telling you to use more technology? Well, because it's a cost savings. Why is it a cost savings? What is the data they have that this is a cost savings? And just keep asking why, till you get to the real reason why. And it could be I just have to do what my boss tells me. I have to do what the CEO tells me. Okay, great. Let's think about how you can do it in a way that is successful. So maybe you do use generative AI for summarizing emails, for writing a first draft to an email, right? For making your handbook available to employees and having a lawyer audit all the answers it gives out, right? I think where we're getting lost in this noise of generative AI is this misconception, right? And again, it's a misconception because it makes so many mistakes. Is that it can come and effectively take over legal roles versus it can be used during some legal tasks to save us a little bit of time here and there based on things where we've trained it, we've tested it, and we know it works, right? And I use generative AI all the time, but every time I use it, it makes mistakes. It's not effective right now. And I think that's the one thing people are not saying about generative AI and law. I'm like, yes, it's great. It has a lot of promise. Don't download it. Don't like ignore it. But know that all the problems you're trying to solve, there might be solutions out there that already work, that are less risky, that are less uncertain. And at the end of the day, if you can go back to the C suite and say, hey, I just saved you $5 million on your outside legal spend by just transitioning the work from law firms to ALSPs, you're going to look a lot better than if you try to bring generative AI, nobody uses it, it doesn't save anyone time, and the cost has not been reduced whatsoever. And that's why I think we see layoffs in legal ops because they do the latter instead of the former.
And worse yet, you will leak your trade secrets and other stuff that helps your company to stay competitive and profitable and all kinds of stuff. And we do know that lawyers have access to important information in the company. You usually escalate things to legal because it's important, not because it's not important. And that tends to be a very, at the minimum, sensitive information, if not competitively critical information. We are coming to the end, Maryam, and you and I could have this conversation all day. I really enjoy your company. I have maybe a few questions. I want to focus a little bit on this relationship between ALSPs and legal ops. It's a very critical relationship. We, as legal tech providers in the past, have worked with many ALSPs, and a trusted ALSP is an asset to everyone, including legal tech, including to legal ops. So maybe let me ask you this question. If I am in-house leader, whether I'm lawyer or a legal ops or a combination of the two, what are the things I can do to build a better relationship of trust and confidence with ALSP to make sure that we're both productive?
I know this may sound silly, but set up a coffee chat with your ALSPs or various ALSPs. Say, hey, I have no needs. I just want to learn. Come and tell me what you guys do. And once every month or every 2 months, be like, tell me what you guys do. I just want to learn. I just want to know things. Be in the know. I think where I see, especially, in-house legal ops and lawyers are like, oh, I don't have needs. I don't want to take a sales call. And I'm like, if you treat it like a sales call, then you won't learn anything. So think about it as a learning experience, right? Learn once a month, once every 2 months about your top 3 ALSPs, your top 3 legal tech, and be in the know. And just speaking from my personal experience, over at Axiom, we have about 3,000 projects a year. I talk to like 50 people a month. So like like the information in my head that I could be sharing is immense. And so I'm always like, please come and take the information you need to help you be effective. Don't think you should only be talking to me when you have a need, because then, right, it becomes transactional versus a relationship, right? And the best relationships are based on conversations. And so that's my advice. And I know people are busy and they're like, I don't have time to be talking to everyone, but treat it like a 20-minute conversation and try to at least have one with an ALSP or a tech company a month, so you two can be in the know of what's really going on in the industry.
Yeah, approaching conversations, whether they're sales or not, sort of consultative and as learning experiences, that's just generally a good strategy in life, especially when you talk to a subject matter expert who sees folks like you all day, every day, and they understand what could possibly go right and what could possibly go wrong and how you can be on the right side as opposed to wrong side. Maryam, I also want to ask you sort of what not to do, other than, of course, treat every conversation as sales. As a legal ops or in-house leader, what is the one thing you should not be doing in approaching ALSP's relationship and the various conversations?
I know this may sound a little strange to in legal, but say, don't have a preferred provider. If you talk to everybody, you learn a lot more. And if you have a true need and you send it to multiple companies at the same time, you'll find the best talent. What I see a lot of times is in-house legal teams will go with the lowest cost option. But is that the best option, right? And the difference is a couple $100, right? And so that's where I'm like, I'd be careful in doing that, because again, it goes back to, Olga, I think you understand legal so well. It's an area where you want to expose yourself to too much risk and you want to get the best value, right? And so always send your need to multiple companies at the same time, have conversations with multiple companies, and be honest with them that you're talking to multiple companies so you can find the best option, the best solution, right? And this also goes back to legal tech. Just because a legal tech solution took you to lunch, treated you really well, has really good marketing, doesn't mean they're the best legal tech solution for you. You should always demo, pilot, proof of concept, multiple solutions before you make your buying decisions. The number of times I have seen people not do a proof of concept before buying legal technology or going with an ALSP, it's alarming, because they might be exposing themselves again to risk that shouldn't be there in the first place.
Oh, you're so full of practical insights. I just love it. Miriam, thank you so much for sharing. I really enjoyed the journey you made geographically across various degrees in law from JDLM to PhD. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation about ALSPs and best practices. And thank you very much for contributing to this gem of a book. I really appreciate it. We covered a lot of ground, and I want to make sure that if folks remember nothing else, because this was a long conversation, what is the one takeaway you want them to take from this conversation?
I would say know that the future is bright for legal and that we can stop this burnout that's happening if we all come together and think more practically about solutions to our problems.
Oh, I could always count for you to end on the optimistic note. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self, Let's Law Better. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Just remember, the future of law is looking pretty awesome. Let's team up and shake things up in the legal world together. See you soon.